Cold War with Russia. And at any moment, the missiles may arrive in the United States. At any moment, there may be submarines pulling up outside of the Long Beach Ferris wheel or just off of Coney Island. In fact, there's movies. The Russians are coming about precisely exactly that. Woody Allen at the end of, I believe it is Radio Days, great picture, sees a submarine. Yes, there were actually Wolfpack submarines just off of Brighton Beach or Coney Island or what have you in New York City.
And then suddenly, I saw it. It was just like Biff Baxter described it. It came up and went under so mysteriously and silently that I couldn't believe my eyes. I never told anyone about it afterward because I doubted my own experience.
They were all around Galveston Bay and all around off the coast of Texas, etc. German submarines were during World War II. So the idea that Russians could possibly show up on our shores is beyond plausible. It's a very real value. And everybody's lobbying back and forth, more like tennis, where everybody's smarting from the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm just a kid, but in 1966, the government says that every stereo that comes out in the United States, whether it's Japanese, because Sony was beginning to rear its magnificent head, or whether it was General or any of these Zenith or an American-made company. I don't even know if there are any more American-made television companies. Are there? Really? Or they certainly aren't made in America. Anyways, with that in mind, AM radio, and I'm not even sure what AM means, and I grew up with it. AM radio had been around for quote-unquote forever. It's as old as the cartoon of you had a little transistor radio the size of your iPhone, okay, the size of your cell phone, and you had to hold it up to your ear. And you know the image of the Bobby Soxer, and she's doing like this, and she's got a little skirt on with a poodle that's embroidered, you know, right there. And she's got bobby socks and kind of penny loafers, dime loafers, whatever. My parents used to give me dime loafers, but instead of a dime for a phone call, they used to give me $65 for bail. Anyway, we used to carry around the transistor radio. It would have one big dial for tuning and another one for volume. And that would be it. It was a big thing when tone actually showed up. That was just one rolling thing for treble and bass. And you would hold it up to your ear. And we all know that cartoon of, you know, da-da-da-da-da. You're listening to it, that one little speaker like so in your ear. You might graduate to the little earpiece like the hearing impaired might have used, but that was, you know, plugged into the same transistor radio. Sony came along in the earliest part of the 60s, I believe, and I remember having a little shoulder motor, a little black and white shoulder motor, and listening to the Ali fights and the landing on the moon on that. But I was ahead of my time, man. I knew how to, you know, motivate early on. But it became, it was a federal mandate that all stereos that came out after, I believe, February 1966 had to have FM band radio. You could sell AM radios, but they had to have FM also, because FM band, which had been around, according to Uncle Manny, who's in his 90s, FM band had been around since like 1920s or 30s or so forth. That had been around for a long time. Frequency modulation or whatever it even, what it even stands for, I don't even know. But it had been around for a long, long time, and they decided we had better install this on every available stereo that's coming out for sale as a means of an emergency broadcast system. And we all know this was a test of the emergency broadcast system in the event of...
This station has interrupted its regular program at the request of the United States government to participate in the emergency broadcast system. This is an attack warning. Repeat, this is an attack warning.
I was born
FM radio, which was now part of your AM. If you bought something at the local whatever store down the street, you wanted your AM radio, that was all your favorite stations, but you also had FM. And the government said, this is in case we get bombed. This is in case the missiles show up from Cuba. This is in case the Cold War finally reaches our shores. Virtually everybody will be equipped with the appropriate channel upon which the government will speak. Okay. They also mandated that you had to have it fully active. You couldn't just install it and just leave it fallow. FM stations were owned by everybody who ran AM radio, and AM radio was already up and running and corrupt and just as, what do we call it, complex and divisive and fully out of control as the movie business has been, and the theater business and everything else that involves the fine arts that have been around for a long time. AM radio, of course, had charts, top 40 charts. The sound of top 40 was the screaming boss jock DJ, hopping and bopping and popping with the best bet for the boss beat at the top of the pop. Small change, baby, and rearranging it. I'm Diamond Dave, don't go away, we'll be right back after. And, it would carry on like that. And that's where that rap actually comes from.
Run. The Crystals on All-American Go-Go Radio, WABC, New York Town. We're 11 minutes until 2, WABC time. Babalu, the Big Daddy with you on Swingin' Sounds in New York, WABC.
When you hear Austin Powers going, all right, baby, like this, he's actually imitating New York City DJs. The Beatles came to the United States in the early 60s, encountered all of those East Coast screaming boss, jock, wrecking crew, Dave Roth right here. And they started to imitate that. That's where that swinging England, all right, baby, is coming from, because it was cool to imitate New York, as it has so frequently and historically been. Anyways, the new little stereo that you bought had to have an FM band radio station, which was part of every existing AM operation. So here, if we had, Mighty 1090, or we had, KHJ, 93 KHJ. One of these stations, and I believe it was KHJ's, Metro Media, Channel 5 or whatever on the television, it was a big conglomerate, had to have an FM channel, and you had to have it functional, and to keep things even, just so that the big boys didn't have a monopoly on things, the channel of FM that you operated couldn't be the exact same broadcast as what was on your AM channel. So let me try and simplify this. I supposedly own an AM radio station. It has 10 listeners and it broadcasts 24 hours in Los Angeles. Now I have to have an FM radio station, and I can't just broadcast the same show. I have to hire different DJs. I have to have different commercials. I have to play different music in a different pattern, et cetera, because it's a whole new playing field, says the federal government. And the channel has to maintain operative status, because in case the Russians are coming, we all got to be ready. This is the true history. Oh my God, what are we going to do here? AM radio is fully established. You got gangsters and mobsters and everybody making sure that the payola takes place, and everybody's fighting for first place, second place, third place on the top 40 charts, etc. And now we have to operate FM radio? What the fuck is that? We all got our fortunes sewn up. We know how this operates. The town is locked down. What do we want to do with FM? But the government says we got to operate. And somebody literally at a table says, hey, I got a cousin who loves music, this fucking kid. He's got a headband, he's a lava lamp, he smokes pot, I think, he's got the incense and everything. He's constantly in there listening to Quicksilver Messenger, I don't know, it's Jimmy Clapton, Hendrix, whatever the fuck that is. And you know what? This fucking kid, he's got stacks and stacks of records. What do you say? I bring the fucking kid in. He's got some milk crates. We'll put the fucking records in the fucking milk crates. We'll put them in the back of the caddy mini. We're going to bring him on down to the studio, put him up in the fucking basement, let him play records, smoke dope all day. What the fuck? And this is what the bent noses actually said. This is everybody was operating radio and playing Pat Boone and Elvis Presley and et cetera already, you know. Sinatra and, you know, geez, I'm not that old, am I? You know, these boots are made for walking, and I did it my way. I'd say, that's all wrapped up, man. We got that tied up. Get some hippie kid with a headband and long hair to go down in the basement and play long records. Who gives a shit? And literally, guys are tapped on the shoulder and they say, come on, you know, bring all of your records down to the basement. Do a 4-hour shift. We'll pay you minimum wage. Now you actually have gainful employment. You have a job. Rodney, please. Just load up all of your Janis Joplin and your Cream records and your Led Zeppelin records and your Rolling Stones records, please. And go down to the basement. And we need you to play the records. And we need you to operate and keep the channel open. The most preeminent of which, and one of the very first of which started to get the attention, was here in Pasadena, California. It was KPPC was the name of it, underneath the Unitarian Church, just up the street up here on Colorado Boulevard, where the Rose Parade walks by every New Year's Day. And in the basement of that church was the FM underground radio. And it was literally underground because it was in the basement. I don't think we called it underground because it was in the basement. It was called underground because it was divisive, like the French underground in World War II or some shit like that. You know, it was like, this is the voice that isn't supposed to be heard, that will now not be stilled. And it was a political voice. It was a social, a cultural, a musical voice. You know, the same voices that now echo in and around the internet.
Anybody who's genuinely interested in the country and the people
gets killed.
Yeah.
Really?
Either gets killed or doesn't make it for long enough. Whereas, you know, the other people who become presidents it doesn't seem to have anything to do with the country or the people. You know, it's completely their own scene, their ego, the thing of I'm the prez, watch out.
You had a series of disc jockeys, some of whom are still with us. And they needed a disc jockey who was going to kind of head it up. We needed a personality, as the story goes. This is 1966, 1967. And there's a fellow named Big Daddy Tom Donahue up in San Francisco. His background is jazz. And the jazz players come from a whole different kind of late night kind of referencing as far as, wow, what have you been up to? What have you been doing? Okay, I'll cut to the crash. Those guys did a whole different kind of bunch of drugs than the hippies did. The hippies did a whole lot of transcendent whatever. You had energy from peyote, I think, and, you know, the overall AM Boss Jock Radio Hitbound Wrecking Crew was like 7 cups of coffee. Everybody was doing diet pills from downtown up to the president's wife, and everybody's talking a lot like I speak now, except I'm genetically wired this way. With that in mind, the jazz fellas were very slow. They came from a very more considerate, kind of a Miles Davis-ish sort of a background, man. And a lot of them were, well, heroin addicts, frankly. And what can you say about that, brother? There's a whole lot of distance there. And they would start to put a lot of space between the words and take some time. Just talking. Roth here. Roth Show.
That's Agency Man and Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. This is Tom Donahue, and Frank Zappa of the Mothers of Invention is our guest in the studio tonight. And we had Agency Man, which is what they call, I guess, an outtake in a sense.
A lot of it would sound like this. Weren't sure if the fella actually fell asleep. It was kind of cool if he actually did. I'm not sure if he actually did, but this will be coming out in stereo in a couple of weeks with the brand new Quicksilver, and he'd get a kind of a surge of energy, sort of like junkies do, and then he'd sort of back off, and it's not quite in stereo. It's going to be out in a couple of weeks that way. We're going to play it for you now. And you'd hear him unwrapping the record, because he forgot to unwrap the record before the introduction. And he's trying to talk while he puts it on the spindle, but the little spindle came out, and now it's going around and around on the turntable, and he's trying to cover that. But that happened to all of us, those of us who had realistic turntables. Anything that cost more than a few $100s, you know, the little spindle was, you know, very, very small, and well, sometimes it would come out, and it would go round and round. And you'd try and catch it, but it would go around and around, and it would continue around. And you try and cover that by talking about that record you were about to play, but then you drop the spindle on the floor, and you would hear it hit the floor. And that was kind of the first real reality vérité, whatever. I don't know what that means, but I think I pronounced it perfectly. Roth Show. Don't go away.
This is the first phase. This is the Adam age. Are you online? Your age, you're on a test. Tell me, who's your favorite thing? I'm gonna back you into the Adam age, yeah. My intentions like a harpoon, like a monsoon in your jam room.
All right. You try to go away. We got you back. And Big Daddy Tom Donahue, coming down from San Francisco with his jazz background, I think he'd had some background in rock and roll or what have you, he was talking like this. And I guess the faster those top 40 disc jockeys talked, then hey, slower we done. Anyway, Quicksilver, right after this. And that's actually how it would sound. And it would take half of Sunday night for him to get through 2 paragraphs, which was ultimately cool. And whether or not he was a heroin addict or a junkie, he was imitating the style. Style is everything, man. Style is everything, you know. And, you know, so you can tell that I've practiced this voice more than once anyway. Roth Show. My name's Roth. Usually. And we would practice that delivery. And that became the sound of underground radio. Here we're going to be playing the new Stones tune right after this. Commercial. Now how cool is that? We didn't know it to be jazz. We knew it to be, that's the sound of underground radio.
Okay, and here we are. We're getting ready to go again. And in the studio we have Chris Christopherson, Rita Coolidge, a couple people adjusting microphones. Oh yeah, the Norman Luboff Choir and the Mormon Tabernacle Choir are all in the control room. At least that many. Okay, let's give it back to Chris and hope he's listening.
FM radio, like any Wild West or Wild East border town, starts to become populated by 2 factions. Those with the badge and those who are contrary to the badge. There's the legit and those who are going to, you know, start to exert their power or their influence and start to chase the charts as, you know, top 40 record had the charts being chased. payola and different kinds of monopolies are being developed. And, once it was realized that you could sell a lot of records on FM radio, then of course it became a very corporate venture. But that's not an entirely bad thing. As Carole King describes in her autobiography recently, she says whenever she wrote a song, she not only had to write a superb song that was exquisite and life-altering and took people on an emotional roller coaster of a ride, but she had to win. She had to win the opportunity to put the song out because there were a variety of other songwriters in the Brill building or whatever building she was working in. And they were all competing for the same attention of the same guy, an agent, a business rep, whoever it was, all of them competing for that person's attention, for him to say, that's a hit. And they had to win the opportunity and beat out everybody else in the building that day or that week, as the case may be, and then go and compete on the top 40 charts, as the case may be, utilizing things like touring, television appearances, personal appearances, advertising, and endorsements, et cetera, to try and get to the top. So it wasn't just a case of fine arts. It was fine arts and heavy industrial strength, heavy infantry. You had to use every stratagem and combative tactic that chess players use, or that politicians, diplomatic service players, etc., utilize as well, to try and, just make a living to feed yourself. This goes way, way back. Finally, it reinformed what quote-unquote underground radio was, or FM radio was. But that's not an entirely bad thing, because listen to some of Carole King's repertoire. Those songs are pretty, those are industrial strength. They are fortified, and they're going to last a lot longer than the individual who haven't even sang them. They are forever, virtually, especially now that we have the cyber future, that we live in the digital future currently. That being said, that process also reinformed urban music, African American, black, whatever you want to call it. And dance music started working its way in the 70s, and coming up with, what I used to go to, the Washington Theater. I don't know that it was actually called the Washington. It was on Washington Street. It was Cinema 21, actually. It's boarded up now. But Cinema 21 was up in the hood, and it would be me and several of my buddies, maybe Stan and Mickey, and we would be the only white faces in the entire audience to go up and watch Car Wash 3 times in a row. I had a special jacket that I had gotten here in a vintage store in Pasadena at the, it was called the White something or other. Anyways, it was like Salvation Army, and the jacket was 6 sizes too big. And I would wear it like so, and I will try to demonstrate here. And it was really big, and you take the 6-pack, and you take 3 of the cans of the 6-pack, and you put them in the back here, in your back of your pants, inside, and the other 3 hanging outside your pants. And the jacket's big enough, and then you just kind of walk in like this, keep on trucking, and go, 3, please. Did I already discuss this on film? And the only 3 white faces in the entire theater would walk in, just sort of like, keep on trucking, Bubba. How you doing? And we would sit and watch the movie 3 times in a row, on a rainy day 4 times. If it was a double feature, we'd be in there for 6 hours sometimes, I don't think people do double features anymore. Certainly not, from what I experienced. But those radio stations that catered to that music started thriving. And more than anything else, when dance music really clicked in, New York City just surged ahead. And it was WKTU, Paco. This is Shadow Traffic. And he was talking in an underground voice, even though the music was
92 KTU. It's about Mama Jamma. Yeah.
when I started traveling with Van Halen, just from city to city in Southern California, much less when we finally started making records and going transcontinental, you know, from sea to shining sea. The radio stations were not all syndicated as per today. You know, today there's probably 2, 3 big brothers and they control everything, and this is no big secret, what have you. But then, if you went out to San Bernardino, which is an hour and a half in the car one way, it's a very different kind of radio sound than up towards where they're wearing headbands and burning incense up in Northern California, UC Davis, Berkeley, etc., which is very different than, you know, UC Las Vegas. Woo! That's a whole different radio station, and I would tape record all of them on the cassette in my shoulder motor. On tape recording onto the cassette on your little stereo is something that I really miss doing. That's a toughie to do on a CD. Yeah, I can go on the internet and I can download it from the iPod of the Skype, but it's different than listening to a radio station in a different city than you live in and tape recording what's going on, particularly if you associate it with the pretty girl that you're with right at that moment, or you associate it with the lonely time that you're experiencing and you got the blues and that song came on, or you heard that DJ's voice. You know what's way cool is when you would record onto your cassette in foreign countries. And I still get a kick out of watching, for example, Japanese television. And the fellow's going, and then he says something in English like, Pepto-Bismol, diarrhea. I still get a kick. I never get tired of that trick. It's like playing ball with my dog Russell. It's endless and infinite fascination and diversion. We never get tired of it. And you would tape record that onto your tape deck. And then you could listen to it literally years later. And it's sort of like opening up a book that you were reading, a paperback that you were reading at the beach. And again, you've got that, there's some romance involved. There's that pretty gal. Hey, Stacy, I'm thinking about you. Wow, this is the book I was reading at the beach when we stayed in the tree house. And you open up the book and some sand falls out of the book. And it feels dry. The pages feel dry from the sun. And you know it was because you dropped it out of the kayak into the water, and then you had to dry it on the rocks, and then dried the pages out, and you know that that's why they feel that way, you know, like that. I don't know that you're ever going to get that out of an iPad, but hearing music also, music will deliver that to you. Not going to a movie now, you can go, yeah, I remember seeing this movie at such and such a time, but that will not deliver you the same thing. Paperbacks and listening to that cassette tape of that music off of that radio station. What language is that? Well, it's Portuguese, man. That was when we were in Brazil. And that's when I was in love with Paula. And I used to put this song on replay, which meant at the end of every time that it would finish, it'd be this kind of romantic thing, and we'd be both naked, and we'd be, you know, with the windows open, and the drapes are blowing. It's Rio de Janeiro, and, you know, the guys say, but it's a cassette tape, and at the very, you know, it would rewind. It's sort of like making love at the beach. One little speck of sand can create quite a diversion. But you get used to it. So you pick the longest song that you could possibly find, because you knew that there was going to be like a prime wake-up moment. But, you know, you might even use that to your own ill-gotten purposes, you know. We'll talk about those later. Roth Show.